Diablo 4's been out for almost a week now, and if you started playing during the early access, you most likely are already in the end game. If you started with the full release time, you have about 2 days of playtime behind you. I've spent close to 70 hours playing my barbarian all the way through the campaign and diving into the various different parts of the end game, and I wanted to share some tips, some musings, and just some general thoughts on things which I realized as I was in this journey, and also now that I am attempting to make my way to level 100 as efficiently as possible. Honestly, first and foremost, to no fault of their own, Blizzard have really created an awesome game world for us to essentially run around in, with lots of little areas to explore and side activities and side missions and dungeons to go into and just random events popping up. And it isn't super easy to essentially get sidetracked and go off the beaten track and kind of like find different things to do and, you know, different ways to die.
How the fuck does something like this happen?
But something that I kind of like realized along the way that it's sort of like it's in your best interest to essentially prioritize the story, the campaign of the game at the beginning, just due to the fact that it's so much easier to do all of the collectibles and all of the side activities later on in the campaign when you have access to a horse, or even more so when you've actually finished the campaign and now also have a huge amount of side activities, aka end game activities, available to you. Now, a lot of these are different ways for you to get excellent loot, like world bosses and hell tides and things like that, and these are ways for you to essentially gear up your character and gain access to the mats that you need to be able to upgrade items and dismantle items and put new aspects on items. So a lot of these things are not going to be available to you, and it kind of like makes sense to try and get there rather sooner than later, so that while you are enjoying all these things like all of the dungeons and finding all of the altars of Lilith and all of that, you will also have a chance of accumulating these materials along the way. So absolutely get into the single player, get stuck into it. It's an awesome ride. It's a hell of a lot of playing time. You go basically almost over the entire map. It's kind of like a little bit of an emotional roller coaster if you're into the lore of the game, and it's just a really good time. But go ahead and prioritize that, and what's going to happen is you're going to end up at around level 45, 46, 47, something like that, and you'll be done with the campaign. And then essentially, honestly, the game starts and the world opens up. Around this time that you get to the actual meat and bones of Diablo 4, the end game, you might be wondering what is the most efficient way for you to accumulate XP so that you can actually get more Paragon points and so that your character can grow in strength. But at the same time, you want to be getting good access to good loot. And so the best way for you to combine those two things is what you essentially should be looking for, and most likely what you were wondering about. Now, a quick search on YouTube is going to get you all kinds of videos showing this is busted, this is the best place to go to, oh my god, this is game breaking, this is going to get nerfed. And these kinds of videos will essentially usually pick one specific dungeon, maybe two, maybe three, that have a high density of monsters, which means you have a higher chance of those monsters dropping loot because there's more of them, and also because there's more monsters, you're getting more XP. So it's like a double whammy. As an add-on feature, you also want the dungeon to be very straightforward and not kind of difficult to navigate. So oftentimes straight lanes and just like a cube that you run in or something like that is preferable. Now, the unfortunate truth about this is that Blizzard plays whack-a-mole with these, and as soon as one of these pops up and gets a lot of attention, then very shortly thereafter there's usually a patch that addresses this. However, at the moment right now, for instance, the three which are, I guess, the flavor of the week is the Forsaken Quarry, which sits right above the capital Kir Vashad. Then we have Champion's Demise, which is super popular with power leveling streamers right now due to the fact that it has straight lines, and essentially you can kind of like divide and conquer in a team and clear it, you know, 3 times as fast. This one sits kind of like to the middle and to the left of the map, kind of like right above this lollipop looking, you know, piece of the map. You see what I mean? Like the little straight piece there and the round piece, it looks like a fucking lollipop.
Bullshit!
And then also Anika's claim, which back in the day with the betas, of course, it was goated, was like the best one for you to do, is kind of good as well. And again, like I said, the reason why these three in particular, why I'm mentioning them, is because they're very easy to navigate. They feature goatmen who die fucking easy, and basically they have huge amounts of these goatmen. They have huge amounts of these enemies, and so you can kill a lot of enemies very fast, meaning good XP, and all of those enemies have a chance of dropping some juicy loot. Now, as said, eventually these do get nerfed, or at the very least that seems to be the case, as Blizzard has been hard targeting a lot of these areas which have been really good for farming, or really good for kind of like exploiting in a way for farming. That being said, I want to present two alternative ways for you to level that also have a lot of good loot. They're not quite as fast, or potentially not quite as efficient as those three dungeons or some of the other ones that you might still find. But Grim Favors for the tree is really good, just due to the fact that you can do these super fast. You can round these up. They give you good options at specifically targeting loot. And on the other hand, every time you complete a set of 10, the XP that you get from that completion is actually pretty damn solid. So if you haven't been doing these Grim Favors, absolutely look into it. It is really good. And then on the other side, and this should come as no surprise, Nightmare Dungeons are really good. For the same reasons that you prefer to run the other dungeons, the only difference being that Nightmare Dungeons can oftentimes be very difficult if you get a bad selection of affixes, or let's say qualities to the monsters inside a dungeon. That being said, a Nightmare Dungeon has a good chance of dropping really good loot at the end, at the completion of the dungeon. And if you have a good key that has a dungeon that has a huge amount of density, then you're also going to be able to rack in some serious XP. I would say the third and probably most important part about running these Nightmare Dungeons is that you'll also get an opportunity to actually level these glyphs that you use for the Paragon system. So this can be an easy or an early start for you to get started on leveling those glyphs. Of course, the beginning Nightmare Dungeons offer very little XP per glyph. It's basically like 2 Nightmare Dungeons for 1 level, but you will very soon start accumulating higher level keys, which means more difficult content, but also better rewards and also more XP at the completion of the Nightmare Dungeon. So if you haven't been running Nightmare Dungeons, don't sleep on it. Absolutely do it. You don't need to be hanging around waiting for a streamer or a content creator or some bald guy with a beard on the internet like me to tell you which dungeon to run. These Nightmare Dungeons are really good and absolutely worth your time. As you're doing all of this leveling, you'll probably start wondering about things like which build should you be playing for your character, and this might also cause you to go to the internet, look for meta builds and everything like that. Now, by no means am I dissuading you from doing that. I myself am a huge fan of meta builds. I like shit that breaks the game. I like seeing how far I can push a character and min-maxing things, but oftentimes the problem with metas is that they change. And if you put all your horses in front of one carriage and you go all in on a specific kind of build, like let's say Bleed Whirlwind, which I'm playing at the moment right now, it's entirely possible, like Blizzard has already done by nerfing this build, they will continue on to fine-tune things and get builds kind of like in line, pulling heavy outliers, ones which are overperforming, back into line before season 1. So it's possible that whatever you're playing might get nerfed. And nobody really ever enjoys that. The reality of it is, it's something that we have to make peace with in ARPGs, specifically ARPGs of this kind. And so, it's something that is just going to come our way. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this, like I said, I'm not telling you not to play meta builds. I'm not telling you not to look at guides. By the way, I'm bringing out a barbarian guide soon. But the point is that what you should rather do is you should find the thing about your character, about your class that you enjoy playing, find the playstyle that you enjoy playing, and rather refine that. Because the way how power in Diablo works, especially Diablo 4, is that you will over time become more powerful almost no matter what you do. What I mean by this, hear me out, is that because of the Paragon system and the fact that you essentially are always upping your stats, you are slowly but surely essentially like rising water creeping up in terms of power level. Now that means that maybe when you're starting out and you're using some skills which are generally not considered meta and not that powerful, they won't be that great. But then once you find a couple of aspects and once you actually start putting some stat points into your Paragon board, the general power level of your character will grow, and therefore those powers will become more attractive just due to the fact that your power level of your character in general has gotten better. I really think it's super important that you should be aiming to play what you feel like playing rather than trying to shoehorn yourself into a specific meta build, or really just focusing on building this thing and trying to get all the pieces only to have it be nerfed 2 weeks down the line and be disappointed. Inevitably, this time before season 1 is going to be extremely volatile from Blizzard's side. I'm not saying they're going to nerf everything, and I'm not saying they're going to nerf the entire time, and I'm not saying we're going to get patches every second day. But just in the last week that Diablo's been going, we've essentially had 2 fairly large adjustments, 2 aspects and 2 things inside the game, and so it's entirely possible that we can expect more of this to come. And so therefore I think it's better for you to rather just focus on why you're playing Necromancer and which skills of the Necromancer you like. If you don't like using Bone Spear, fuck it, don't use Bone Spear. Don't use Bone Spear because everybody's telling you to use it because it's the best skill. Use something that you feel like using, and you'll probably enjoy the game a whole lot more. Hold up, wait a minute. Shiny McCord's theme. Yeah, I know it's been a while. What can I say? Your mother's keeping me busy. But this is a reminder that the Full Measures channel has a guild in Diablo 4 called The Assembly. You can find it quite easily. As well as in the link of this video, there is a Discord channel that's mentioned with like-minded gamers on there. So go ahead and join one of those 2 or both if you're a straight G, and come hang out with some people. We'll play the game together. We'll do some world bosses, all that shit. Until then, cheers. And now after all that serious shit, let me finish off with one thing which I realized like super late in the game. People always say, and I'm also always saying it on the streams and to my buddies and stuff, remember to drink your elixirs. You're getting that 5% additional XP. That shit is fucking important. But the other thing about elixirs is they have really good stats for other things as well. So oftentimes if you're attempting the same dungeon over and over, like one of those 3 that I just mentioned right now, you'll notice that, for instance, 2 of those 3, well actually I think it's all 3, usually like 2 out of 3 times have a shitload of goatmen in them. So if you then take the goatmen elixir, which gives you 20% of additional damage against goatmen, you're just gonna cut through those minions that much quicker. Now there's a different elixir for almost fucking anything in this game, especially the minion types, but also like different kinds of damage you can take, although I don't think those are that effective. But absolutely have a look at this the next time. Don't just, like for me, for like the first 40 hours in the game, I basically just chugged the first fucking elixir that my mouse went over as soon as I opened the consumer or the consumable part of my backpack. But actually, if you pay attention to this, you can squeeze a little bit of extra juice, a little bit of extra damage out of your character, and that's going to make it a bit easier as you grind those dungeons. And that's going to be it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments down below if you enjoy this kind of content. At the moment right now, I'm staying away from making build specific content just due to some of the points which I mentioned earlier, the volatility of builds at the moment, and just generally things being adjusted up and down by Blizzard themselves as they look at how people are playing. People are only now starting to trickle into like level 90 to 100 where the real power of certain builds starts showing up. And so it's entirely possible that things might get adjusted a bit more. But as I said, let me know if you enjoy these little talky videos a bit more. I've got a bunch more tips going on in my head. I'm full of this shit, I promise. But as always, it's just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Until next video, fucking cheers.